What's going on, guys? Welcome to your introduction to general mobility. Now, in the next couple of minutes, I'm going to take you through some of my best poses, movements for kind of rehabilitating the body if you're in severe pain. Personally, as we know and as we'll go to learn, there's two different types of mobility. There's passive mobility, so kind of like that yoga-ish stretching mobility where we hold muscle group stretches for a long time. There's dynamic mobility where we kind of move through the motion a little bit more freely and we're not so concerned about holding for a long period of time, as well as active mobility. Now, active mobility is going to be all our shoulder cars, our scap cars, our pails and rails. Everything from the FRC model is active mobility, where I'm working hard for my mobility. Over the next little bit, we're kind of going to be on the passive to dynamic side of mobility, just because this is my favorite way to introduce my clients and myself when I've regressed in my training back into training. So for me personally, recently I went through this really bad jiu-jitsu injury. My back was all twisted up, my kinetic lines were shortened, I could hardly protract my shoulder blades. So trying to do, active mobility wasn't the best for me. I needed to kind of bring myself down, do some diaphragmatic breathing, get parasympathetic, and do some passive mobility. So that's what this is all going to be about, just opening up the body, exploring. We're going to touch on a couple things from FRC, but right now we're just trying to feel out our bodies. I want you to imagine this is kind of like a yoga class or something of that effect. Of course, we don't really like the whole yoga holding poses thing, but I want you to be in that kind of mindset. The first thing we're going to do here, guys, we're actually going to get into our quadruped position. Now, our quadruped position is this position here, where we have a hand right under our shoulder and knees right under our hips. We don't want to be too far out. We want to be nice and compact here. And from here, I'm going to do what is called a cat-cow, where from the bottom of my spine, I start to extend through my whole spine. This would be the cow portion, and then this would be the cat portion. Now, what I'm going to do is just start to move through these motions, not really thinking about anything, just thinking about the cow and the cat. Okay, I'm just breathing and moving, and we're going to get specific in a second here. I just want to get you guys warmed up, just moving that spine, full flexion. The cat is flexion, the cow is extension, okay? And what we're going to try to do is we're going to try to move vertebrae by vertebrae from the bottom of our spine to the top of our spine, going from flexion to extension and extension to flexion. So essentially, what I'm going to do here, this is called spine segmentation. This is one of the most important things we need to do as humans. We need to start to be able to move each vertebrae independently. So when we do have pain, when we do have discomfort, or even when we're trying to apply motion and power, not everything moves as one unit. So starting at the lumbar, I'm going to start with my lumbar and I'm going to go vertebrae by vertebrae, like I'm running up the railroad into extension, maxing out one vertebrae before I move on to the next. And you can do this side by side with me, really trying to get up into the upper back, pushing away, and finally the cervicals will push away. So now I have a fully extended spine. Each vertebrae is at its max potential of extension for right now. And from this position, I'm going to take a deep breath in and out. On the exhale, I'll melt into a bit more of an extension. Extension through the thoracic spine, so through the shoulder blade vertebrae, is sometimes hard. Let's take a deep breath in. Let's try to fill out that vertebrae. And we're going to exhale and melt into a bit more extension. Now we can push away a little bit more. So back to what I was saying about thoracic extension. You can stay extended as I move through my flexion here. When I go into here and I'm moving through my extension vertebrae by vertebrae, once I get to these mid-back vertebrae here, sometimes it gets extremely difficult and sometimes I don't know what I'm doing. I'm trying to retract, I'm trying to protract. So this is totally normal. This is something that you just need to keep trying to extend vertebrae by vertebrae. Use a mirror, push your arms away, and eventually we'll start to figure out how to get these guys into extension. Now, let's extend our spine fully one more time. And from the lumbar, using our glutes, pulling our belly button in, we're gonna go vertebrae by vertebrae from the lumbar all the way up into the thoracic, through the shoulder blades, through the neck. And now we have a fully flexed spine. From this position here, we're gonna take a deep breath in. Maintaining flexion, we're gonna exhale, melt more into flexion. One more time. full inhale. Full exhale. We're going to move from flexion of the spine into extension, starting in the lumbar, moving vertebrae by vertebrae, from the lower up into the mid, up into the shoulder blades, up into the cervicals. And now we're in a fully extended position. We're going to take a deep breath in and out. Starting from the lumbar, we're going to start to flex with our glutes, bring our belly button in. We're going to go lumbar flexion all the way through my thoracics into my cervicals. At the peak, I'm going to take an inhale in. And out. And one more time. Lumbar extension, thoracic extension, cervical extension. Deep breath. And now let's move vertebrae by vertebrae. Okay, sometimes it helps to watch a mirror as I do this to see how my vertebrae are exactly moving. Once I'm at my peak, I have protracted shoulder blades, everything's pushed away. I'm going to take my breath. Trying to fill up my back ribs when I inhale and exhale. Beautiful. From here, we're going to go into a rolling frog wave. So I'm using my flexion and extension to now display a little bit more of a dynamic motion. So knees are splayed out. I'm starting by pushing back into the hip. I'm going to start by dramatically flexing my spine as I bring my hands and shoulders into the same alignment. I'm fully flexed as my shoulders reach my hands. I'm going to start to vertebrae by vertebrae, go into extension, drop the hips, open up the chest tall. From here, I'm going to right away flex my lumbar, my whole spine flexes as I push my hips back into my feet, maintaining flexion. I'm going to move through flexion one more time. Once my shoulders come over my hands, I'm going to vertebrae by vertebrae come into extension. Open up the hips, open up the vertebrae. Flexion as I push back, and we're going to get two more. Flexion, over dramatic flexion into an extension. We call that a rolling wave. And from here, we're going to flex and push back. And we got one more. Flexion, flexion to extension, giving that spine a little bit of love. And we're going to press back into here. This same position, we're going to keep the base position. We're going to switch. We're going to take our left leg. We're going to put it out to the side. Make sure that your foot is down, facing forward. This leg is straight. We're going to now open up our adductor and our hamstring. Same position with our hands. Shoulders are shifting over hands. When I push back, I'm not too concerned about the spine now. I'm more concerned about sitting into the hip, opening up this adductor. From here, I'm going to shift my weight forward so my shoulders are over my hands again. I'm going to exhale and push back, sitting my weight slowly into this hip as this hip gets a nice stretch on the adductor and the hamstring. We're going to push back. On the next three, we're going to push back. As we sit into this, if we can sit into this comfortably, I'm going to walk my fingers back. Once I walk my fingers back, this gives me an opportunity to externally rotate my femur out to the side, going as far as I can with the foot, coming in with the foot, and then shifting my weight back. Shoulders over hands. Two more. Let's shift into that left hip or right hip. We'll walk the fingertips back. Femur rotates, foot moves, and the femur follows. And we're going to follow back down. Walk forward, shift, shift, open up. Get the femur to rotate, come back to the center, switch legs. Left leg is now our base. Right leg goes out to the side. We push our weight back into our left hip. Once it feels comfortable, we come back. Exhaling as needed. And look at the pace, we're going slow. We're just opening up this adductor, hamstring. If these are movements that I haven't done before in a while, then I just need this extra time and this tempo to figure out how to move through. We're rotating the femur up from the foot, coming back down, hands placed on the floor, shift, shift, sitting into the left hip, driving the foot back, coming back forward. Hands walk out. Be like, you can walk your hands out and back and forth, it doesn't matter. Just make sure that as you come forward, you don't bend the elbows and shrug your neck up. You're keeping straight, stiff arms, shift, shift, walk the hands as needed, get the foot back, come forward, walk back. Okay, so just gentle passive opening of the hips, and that should feel pretty good. The next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna start to introduce our 90-90 position. This is a position that we're gonna use all the time for hips, internal and external rotation, and with our FRC curriculum as well, it's essential, okay? If you've ever done this stretch before, you know that it's a complicated stretch to get into. That's why we want to be doing it at this low level passive like form that we're at. We don't want to be sympathetic and trying to be getting into this when we're not in a low mode, okay? How do I set up my 90-90? I have this hip bone right here. From this hip bone, I'm going to draw a straight line, and that's where my knee is going to go, from this bony prominence right here. So my knee goes right here. My foot is just going to go straight into a 90 from there, so I've got this 90-degree angle here. This one's usually easy to find. This one back here is the harder one to find usually. So make sure your foot stretches all the way out. You've got this bone here, you've got your straight line, and then you've got your 90 here as well. So from here, we have an internally rotated hip that we can play with and an externally rotated hip that we can play with. What we want to do first is stretch the external hip. So what I'm going to do is make sure that my sternum is in line with this bone right here, with this line that I've created from my bony prominence forward. And what I'm going to do is slowly shift my weight forward like I'm trying to bring my belly button forward. So imagine you've got like a fish hook attached to your belly button and it's pulling you straight this way. At the same time, you're going to start to push the butt cheek back to display this angle right here. Now this is the stretch that I'm trying to get, and I'm trying to actually get my glute here. If I do this stretch here, which you'll see in the yoga all the time, it's a great stretch, but it's very superficial. With our 90-90, we want to get as deep into the tissue as possible. So for this, we're going to make sure that we're not getting additional mobility from our spine. We're staying tall, and we're only using the hip to slowly start to melt forward. So again, I'm pulling forward with that fish hook. I'm shifting the hip back. I need to be aware of one more thing in my 90-90, that if this is cramping up on you, you need to either put something under it to make it less crampy, or just let the tension dissolve. Because this is cramp city right here, and this thing will cramp up on you sometimes if you're not aware of it, okay? So what we need to do is we're gonna start to mobilize this hip in a second, but to access this hip, we need to make sure that this has a little bit of tension on it, but not so much that I'm cramping. So back to the hip stretch here, we're gonna hold for a minute. Chest over knee. As I bring my butt cheek back, pull the belly button forward. And you're gonna start to feel that stretch deep on that hip. And as you feel that, you're just gonna try to stay on it. Big breaths. This is called my 1 to 2 minute passive stretch. This is for me to try to increase the flexibility of my hip. So I'm trying to create more space in my hip by stretching it out. This is not active mobility, this is passive mobility. And when it comes to FRC, we need to combine both to give us ranges and to do the jobs that we want. But for right now, we're just figuring out this hip. Once you've figured out how to stretch this glute, that's all I want from today. I'm gonna bring my body back upright, and now we're gonna figure out how to stretch the hip internally. So from this position right here, now we're not talking about this glute, we're talking about this hip here. We wanna pull this bone right here back through the glute. So the motion is gonna look like this. This is my internal rotation. I'm trying to pull this guy back. And then if you want to see me come out of internal rotation, I can use my hand here, you can use your hand here as well, to help push yourself back to this position. Call this neutral. Internal rotation, neutral. So let's pull ourselves into internal rotation, and let's just hold for a minute. We're just trying to gradually increase the flexibility of the internal rotation joint by pulling this hip back through the butt. And we're gonna hold for a minute. Over this next minute, it's gonna start to dissipate and it's gonna start to do weird things. The front leg and the back leg is gonna give you a bunch of different sensations as you try to pull into the stretch. Remember, you're just trying to relax. You're not really pulling or pushing anything hard. You're just trying to get this guy to slowly shift back into the hip. And over time, it'll feel more, you'll be more aware of what the feeling's supposed to feel like as you do it, obviously. We're gonna hold for another 20 seconds here. Internal hip. Feel that deep stretch, trying to relax. My hands don't really matter. If this knee comes off the floor, doesn't matter. I'm just focused on here, keeping this foot down. In 5 seconds, we're gonna come back into a neutral position. 5, 4, 3, 2, and we're push neutral. Okay, let's switch our 90-90s. Now we know what external hip rotation, the stretch is supposed to feel like, and the internal stretch. So we set ourselves up, we have our bone, we have our line, we have our 90. We have our bone, we have our line, we have the 90, okay? Again, if this is your first time getting into your 90-90, give yourself some time to feel out this position. Because if you just get into here for your first time and you're just trying to dive bomb stretch, it's not gonna happen. Set yourself up, figure out how to relax into this position first before you even go to the stretch. See if you can just hold yourself nice and square. And then let both hips start to relax. Nothing here should hurt. We're never trying to push past pain when it comes to mobility, strength, endurance. Never do we push past pain. We're always trying to figure out the pathway to less pain, okay? And that all starts with getting nice and relaxed and sussing out your body, getting a good internal picture of what's going on. So now that we've kind of got a little bit more comfortable in the 90-90, we are going to, again, we can put ourselves into the superficial stretch just to feel that glute, but I really want to get myself tall and start to teach my body how to hinge this way. Belly button's going forward, this butt cheek's going backwards as I create space this way. And again, we're just gonna hold for a minute, acknowledging this glute area stretching. Chest over knee, not letting the back leg cramp up. And being super patient with myself as we do this. This is not one of those positions that comes easily. And you're gonna find a lot of this stuff you really have to work for. You really have to be patient. The whole reason that you're taking anything provided by me would be because you care about the movement and care about optimization. So this is all part of that system. This is just a very preliminary step. So we're still holding this stretch on our glute. And in about 20 seconds, we're gonna come off of it. Again, over this passive stretch period, I'm trying to get deeper and deeper into the position, more and more balanced, more and more relaxed, more and more parasympathetic. Let's slowly bring our body back to neutral. Now let's address this back hip. So we're gonna take our hand, we're gonna grab this chunk here, and we can just slowly start to figure out, how do I navigate this back here? And again, let's look at the motion one more time. Neutral, internal hip rotational stretch, okay? If I don't have good internal rotation, what happens? I don't have much space for my knee to demonstrate athletic motions. So cutting side to side, the lack of internal hip rotation makes that a little bit harder. So hip rotation internal is very important for athletes. If you have lower back pain, it could be due to poor internal hip rotation. And again, when have we ever stretched like this? This isn't like a normal stretch you see, right? So again, we're giving ourselves time to figure out exactly, how do I pull my hip back into its socket and get it to relax? Arm placement doesn't matter. And again, I'm just figuring out how to gradually increase that stretch over 1 minute to 2 minutes, okay? We've got 15 seconds on the stretch here. Just sussing it out, pulling this back here. Just being patient. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. From here, we're gonna push ourselves out of that position and come back to neutral. Okay, so we're gonna come out of our 90-90 position, and now we're gonna talk about simple ways to open up the chest. Now again, very passive here. We're just introducing some of these areas, and sometimes when I get injured, when I haven't trained for a long time, this is a good place to go. If I'm really, really sore and I need some mobility, a good place to go. If you have a long foam roller, then that will work. You need either a long foam roller or like a Viper, something that you can lie on. So we're gonna take this foam roller here, we're gonna lie it on the floor, and we are going to get our spine situated on the foam roller. Now, from this position, we are using the foam roller for a few things here. We're using it as feedback to help us keep our ribs down, first of all, because if our ribs are out, we're getting lower spine extension. We're not looking for that right now. So ribs down flat on the foam roller. We're also using the foam roller to help us release in between the spine, specifically in between the shoulder blades. So this drill is to open up your mid-back and your pecs. I get myself situated on the foam roller, I pull my rib cage down so my back is somewhat flat. I don't want to be crunching as hard as I can. I want to just have my back flat and be able to manipulate the tension, not crunch as hard as I can. From here, I'm gonna get my wrist and elbow into this alignment here, into a 90-degree alignment, keeping the ribs down. I'm going to wait until the pec, this muscle group here, gets a stretch. So I'm gonna keep my wrist and my elbow nice and open, and I'm waiting for the stretch of my pec. What I can't do is have my shoulder blade shrug up. I'm keeping myself nice and open. So wrist and elbow are in the same line, back is flat, and now from here, I'm just gonna breathe and let my pecs open. You can see on my exhale, because my wrist and elbow are in the same line, I'm not in this position here, and I'm not here. They're in the same spot. It has direct opening of my pec muscles. I'm gonna go again, deep breath in. You can see on the exhale, the foam roller pulls my shoulder blades this way and my pecs more open. One more time. Once I feel a little bit of release, without letting my ribs pop up and without letting my wrists come up, I'm gonna go do snow angels, where my elbows come to the side and then they reach overhead. I do not want them coming together. I want them reaching straight up. Navigate slowly. Make sure the shoulders don't shrug. Looking for pecs opening, looking for space in between the shoulder blades as I raise, looking for the ribs to stay down. Staying on the line, and yeah, you just gotta roll off that when you're done. Okay, next mobility drill with our long foam roller here. We're gonna put it on our side. You can use a normal foam roller. You can really use a book here. All we're trying to do is stabilize the lower back. So we're gonna take our leg. We're gonna make sure that our whole bottom or side portion of our shin is on the foam roller. We're gonna also make sure that we have space. Now, if your neck hurts or you have neck pain or it's not comfortable, grab either like a pillow, a book, a yoga block, and place it right here. Now I have this open angle. I'm trying to eliminate my lumbar moving, so I don't want this to move. This staying locked here helps that. And from here, I'm going to reach across my body into protraction. Exhale, and reach across my body this way. Now when I do this, I have to keep my knee here, and I have to open the pec. Now once my arm starts to go, you can see that I'm not trying to shove it to the ground. I'm just letting this open. If this bone starts to roll up, I am no longer opening my pec. Now I'm putting myself in a vulnerable shoulder position. Okay, so I gotta make sure I'm not stretching this. I'm getting this to open. So one more time, you can see that as I open, I don't let that this shoulder bone stick this way. I need to figure out how to get this. Now once I've got this, I wanna breathe on it for about 3 breaths. Now I can see that, okay, that's my mid back and my pec opening. From here, I'm gonna come back. So the first one, I hold 3 breaths, and then I'm gonna open 4 times. 4, making sure my shoulder doesn't roll forward. I'm staying on that pec and that mid back. 3, using an exhale to go. Inhale, exhale, 2, and last one. Okay. Let's switch sides. Boom, boom. Set up your little bed here. I've got my knee on top. I've got my arms in a book position, in the T position. First one I'm gonna do, I'm gonna protract. I'm gonna open. I'm gonna bring this knee up. I can hold this with my arm as the pec opens here. And from here, I'm just gonna breathe. 3 breaths to open the pec. Don't let this roll forward. After my 3 breaths, I'm gonna open 4 times. Protracting, opening, protracting, opening. And last one. Protract and open. Oh. All right. So we can kind of conclude the very passive motions here. We're just going to quickly go into our cervical cars. Now, cars. You're going to see cars, you're going to see FRC, you're going to see pails and rails. You're going to see all these weird abbreviations and acronyms for these different things. So what are cars? Cars are controlled articular rotations. Essentially, we use a car for every single joint from our wrist to our neck to our T-spine to show our body the motions that the joint can do, and just make sure that we're still accessing those ranges on a day-to-day basis. We have a saying in FRC, do your cars every damn day. So today we're gonna do 3 cars. We're gonna do our cervicals, our shoulder blades, and our shoulders. So we can start, you can stay standing. If you want, you can stay standing, you can stay sitting on your toes here. You can stay tall, kneeling. We're just gonna sit for the camera, we're just gonna sit right here. First thing I'm gonna do is assess my neck range. So from my neutral position here, looking forward, like I'm peeling a very long sticker off a wall, I'm gonna fold my chin to my collarbone, vertebrae by vertebrae. So we're back into segmenting the spine, just like we did to start with our cat-cows, but now we're talking about the micro, just the cervicals. Once my chin has reached my collarbone, I'm gonna scrape my collarbone with my chin. As I look over one shoulder, make sure your eyes go over the shoulder and then up and around. I'm gonna bring my eyesight up and around in the greatest pain-free range I can make. Looking over the other shoulder, and I'm scraping to come down. Then I'm gonna go the other way. Chin to chest, scrape the collarbone, look over this shoulder, bring the eyesight up and around into the greatest pain-free range I can create, looking over this shoulder, scraping to come down. Now say I went here and I got a little bit of pain. That doesn't mean don't do cars. It means shorten up your car. So then you can start to shorten up the car into the greatest pain-free range you can get, and then we can keep building from there, okay? Let's do one more cervical car each way. Flexion of the cervicals. Chin to collarbone. Collarbone looks over. As I bring my head up and around, over to the other shoulder. Eyes look down as I cut my chin to my collarbone, and to the left. Collarbone, looking over, greatest pain-free circle I can make, over to the other side, and down. Okay, now let's talk about scap cars. Our scapula is these 2 bones that are attached to our spine. But really, you should always be thinking as your upper body as a spine with 2 scapula attached to it. And when you're upper body pressing, when you're pressing, pushing, pulling, whatever, it doesn't matter. You're always thinking about where am I bringing my shoulder blades in relation to my spine. The first thing we need to do is control and show our body the motions that the scapula do. 4 distinct motions. Protraction, where I bring my shoulder blades away from the midline. Elevation, when I shrug my shoulder blades up. Retraction, where I bring my shoulder blades back. And depression, where I bring my shoulder blades down into the pocket. Now I need to have adequate access to all ranges to have a healthy shoulder girdle. Not only that, I need to have protraction for when I'm throwing, breathing. It's very essential. And sometimes we teach ourselves that we should always be like this with our posture, so we've cut off the ability to protract, okay? So let's talk about protraction. Make sure that you have tension in your ribs, you're irradiating tension, making sure that you're not leaking tension out. We can't have our ribs moving with us. We're gonna protract, elevate, retract, and depress, keeping the ribs down. Protract, elevate, retract, and depress. Let's go the other way. Retract, elevate, protract, depress. Keep your arms where they are, try not to move them, just moving the shoulder blades with tension on the core, okay? Now, do your cars every damn day. Let's move on to shoulder cars. Take your right hand, reach it over your left rib cage. From here, we're gonna show our shoulder joint the ranges that our shoulder does, which is flexion with a little bit of medial rotation there, get it into the middle a bit. As I reach my flexion here, I'm gonna reach up as high as I can without turning my palm. Once I can't reach up anymore, if the ribs start to pop, I know that I have to stop my flexion earlier. Once I cannot reach anymore into flexion, I'm gonna flip. We call this roadblock 1. From here, we're gonna reach behind us without letting the scap, the lower spine, take over. We're gonna reach into internal rotation as we clear as much pain-free circle as we can, finishing with the hand looking like this. From here, we're gonna reach back. We're gonna hit roadblock 2. We have to externally rotate around it, making sure our scap doesn't move. We're moving around the shoulder head, back into our flexion position as we come back down, okay? So what we don't want is this. Okay, we don't want to bend in the elbow. We don't want other joints moving. We want flexion. Let's do it together. Internal rotation, extension, finish. Extension, roadblock 2. External rotation, palm up, flexion. Let's try the other side. Left hand, right rib cage. Flexion. Once I hit my flexion, hand flips, roadblock 1. Don't let the scap move, internally rotate, reach. Clear your space into extension. Come back, roadblock 2. Externally rotate, keep the ribs down, reach into your flexion. Okay, we use this not only as a mobility exercise, but as an assessment every single day for ourselves to figure out, how's my shoulder doing today? How's my spine moving today? These are questions that we should ask ourselves every day, and we should grease and floss our joints every day by the usage of CARs, okay? So that was just a little introduction. Hip CARs, ankle CARs, knee CARs will all be in the next section, but that was just a nice upper body flow-based performance warm-up, okay? This is, again, we'll just summarize what we use this for. I use this exact routine to rehabilitate my back when I was in a very, very regressed state of training in immense pain. And I think that it could have great benefits if you're just getting into working out, so this is why it's part of the starter thing. If you're just getting back into working out, or if you're injured and you haven't been training for a while. Okay guys, thank you so much for joining me for General Dynamic Mobility. This is your precursor to everything that we're gonna do in our future. Use this when you feel injured, use this when you feel unmotivated, use this when like you literally don't wanna you don't wanna stand up. Like we didn't even stand up for that whole time, we were pretty much just sitting, and you wanna mobilize and do some good things for your body.